My name is Gary Grimm, and I'm with the Norristown Initiative, and I chair the Civic Life Committee. And you're here today for the Norristown Initiative's Saturday morning forum. Today's topic is the Norristown Gateways. Now, I will be moderating this along with Mary Ellen DiGregorio on my left, and she is the president of the Norristown Homeowners Association and also a member of the Norristown Initiative. And she has supplied us with two of our participants on the panel today. First off, I'm very pleased to announce that we have the presence of Joe Hoffel here today. Joe Hoffel. Not for very long though. He's promised he's going to be running out the door in about a half an hour. So we're going to get him on first. He's going to do a presentation for us about the Lafayette Street connections to the Pennsylvania Turnpike and its aspects and how it ties into Norristown Gateways. And then he will be running away from us. But before he does, we will allow a few questions. And if they get too uncomfortable, I'm sure Joe will decide. Okay. The purpose of our forum today is to discuss Norristown's gateways and the image that it projects to the community and those that pass through our community every day. The primary moving point of that being our roadways. That would be, assume Markley Street, Dekalb, and Main Street. But that also could include our railways, which go along the river and along Markley Street again, and even the Pnc that comes across the river. Now, if you would raise the question as to, well, who cares about Norristown's gateways, and obviously you're not someone that I'm talking to here today. But hopefully if you're channel surfing on Channel 3, the local cable channel, sometime in the next month, maybe you'll stop a little bit and listen to some of our speakers. It's an often tested and proven fact that first impressions are lasting, and this is the primary focus of our forum today on the gateways. If people driving through the town, the first thing they see is littered streets, dilapidated buildings, and post-teenage men and or women hanging on the street corners, that's going to be the lasting impression they have of Norristown. The goal then is to heighten the awareness of the community to its own image and how it's perceived by the rest of our own community as well as those people that pass the road. Now, without too much more ado, but a special thanks to Joe Hoffel again for coming, who, by the way, is, we consider one of our founding fathers of the Norristown Initiative. I think it was approximately 4 or 5 years ago he put out a special presentation, and we had a meeting down at the Cultural Center, I think it was May of '97.
Yeah, that's right.
And soon after that, we were created, and I'm not sure if Joe wants to claim fame to this accomplishment yet, or still, but here we still are 4 years later, going strong. And so I will bring you now Joe Hoffel to address the crowd.
Thank you, Gary. It'll be easier. Well, thank you all, and Gary, thank you for the nice introduction. It's great to see so many people out on a Saturday morning to talk about the future of Norristown. So it's a pleasure to be here with this distinguished panel. And Mary Ellen, thank you, and Gary, for your leadership on the Norristown Initiative. I know your Vice President, Dave Nassiter, is here. I don't see Jim Williams, but I know he provides great leadership, and it's terrific to be here. And Gary, I do want to claim credit for suggesting that we start a Norristown Initiative. In fact, I think it was in this room that it was first publicly discussed in the 1995 County Commissioners race. Joan Nagel and I made a presentation. Congressman Shaka Fatah came out, and we talked about the need for a community group to promote the revitalization of Norristown. And then when I was re-elected as county commissioner, Mary O'Mealy and Rick Buckman and I jointly moved forward, sponsored that 1997 meeting that, among other things, led to the creation of this. But it's one thing to suggest an idea, it's another thing to have it happen, and you are the people making it happen. So I congratulate you. I hope that all of you will continue to devote this time and this energy to trying to improve the quality of life in Norristown. Today's subject is very important, the notion of gateways. How do we bring people in and out of Norristown more effectively and with a better experience? How do we make this a destination? Or if somebody's going through, how do we make sure that a nice impression is made when people do travel through Norristown? But more importantly, how do we make it a destination? How do we make sure that people come here, stay here, invest, live, work, and enjoy the experience? Because if that's happening, and if people are investing money, that's going to improve the quality of everybody's life in Norristown. The most exciting project that I know of on the horizon, one of two that I want to mention briefly this morning, is the revitalization program on the Norristown waterfront that the Borough Council and the County Redevelopment Authority are moving forward with Brian O'Neill as the developer. One of his able staffers is here, Jonathan Spurgle, who will be addressing you in more detail. I received a letter from Brian this week that I know Jonathan will talk about in some detail, bring you up to date on the activities of the developer to move the redevelopment project or revitalization project forward along the waterfront. Clearly, the goal here is to do something like, maybe not identical, but something like what's happened in Conshohocken, or I should say what's happening in Conshohocken, what happened years ago in Manayunk, to get reinvestment, retail opportunities, commercial opportunities, and residential opportunities, making use of the river as an asset. This community, this county, most of this region has neglected the beauty of the Schuylkill for 200 years. It was our dumping ground for the factories. The factories backed up onto the Schuylkill and just put all their waste into it, and that was the end of that. And I think we're learning that there is people love rivers, and good things can happen around rivers. Well, that redevelopment project along the riverbank with all the abandoned industrial sites that exist there on the, I guess it's the south side of Lafayette Street, are not going to happen unless we improve the transportation access for cars and trucks into Norristown. And everybody knows that Main Street gets terribly backed up. It's one way in and out. It's only one route. There's no direct connection to the turnpike. And Norristown gets a little bit isolated because of that. The great thing that's happening is the project to extend Lafayette Street all the way east to the Pennsylvania Turnpike with slip ramps up to the turnpike for ease of entry. And it will do a tremendous job of opening up Norristown to better traffic flow. There'll be two ways in and out, Lafayette Street and Main Street rather than one way. So you get a circular pattern if you need it, and you just have two ways of getting in and out and a direct connection to the turnpike, which should, Jonathan, go a long way to attracting the commercial and business investors that you're going to want as part of your development. And it also should attract people coming in for the retail opportunities, recreational opportunities, and places to live, places to rent and buy. Hopefully that will be built as part of this project in time along the banks of the Schuylkill here in Norristown. The county commissioners a week or two ago released awarded about $3.5 million in contracts to provide the engineering for this extension of Lafayette. It was a $3.46 million engineering contract, and it was announced that 10% of the money was county, 10% of the money Pennsylvania Turnpike money, and 10% state. And with all due respect, without looking like too much of an egomaniac, I'm here to tell you that 80% was federal money, administered by the state, but it was federal money that I secured in the '01 budget. I got a $10 million appropriation for the Lafayette Street extension project. That project's supposed to cost $40 million. The extension, the slip ramps up to the turnpike, and all of that. And $10 million of it will be funded by the federal government. So they called down on that $10 million earmark for 80% of this $3.5 million engineering contract. So I'm very proud of that, and I'm delighted the federal government is part of this project, and I'm pleased that the county is moving forward with PennDOT, with the Turnpike Commission, the county commissioners and the Borough Council are cooperating and moving forward. Plymouth Township is cooperating because those slip ramps will be out in Plymouth Township, and it's a very positive thing. But there's nothing like good road access to help a community develop, help residential, help commercial, help retail and recreational opportunities. So I'm very excited about this whole development. Unfortunately, it's going to take years. It may be 6 or 7 years before this project fully gets underway for construction. Now, I hope we can speed that up. They're looking at 4 or 5 years of engineering and environmental studies alone. So I hope we can move that up. It's a complicated project with lots of interests that have to be reviewed and satisfied before a shovel gets put into the dirt. But this is something that, even though my congressional district will be shifting away from Norristown, to my great regret, and I will just tell you, I think it's outrageous that the Montgomery County congressional seat doesn't have Norristown in it any longer. But that is what's happened. But my interest in this project and in Norristown will certainly continue. The other thing I want to quickly mention is the proposed Septa parking lot at the Dekalb station that has been discussed for some time, and I have secured 2 different grants that total $2 million to go toward the construction of a $5 million Septa multi-level parking garage to be built on top of their existing parking lot at the Dekalb Street station on the outbound side of the station. They will just build up over that existing parking lot. And there's not been a lot of progress to date. I met yesterday with the new general manager, Faye Moore, and I can tell you I found her to be very capable, well-briefed, a very impressive woman, and I'm very pleased that SEPTA has such a capable person at the helm. She gave me a schedule, a piece of paper. She had already ordered her staff to put this project out to bid because she wants it done. And by the end of this month, by March 31st, a RFP, a request for proposals, will be on the street for the project to include property acquisition, engineering, design, and construction of a multi-level parking garage consisting of 500 spaces at Dekalb Street. This will be about $5 million. I will seek more money in next year's federal budget, but I've already earmarked $2 million in 2 different $1 million grants. The problem with those earmarks is if you don't use them in 3 years, they go away. An earmark in the federal budget is an earmarked amount of money for a particular project that's set aside and will be spent, can be called upon by the local officials once they get underway, whatever the project is. But if they don't get the project going, the earmark goes away. And I told the general manager I was worried about that, but she anticipated my concern, and this project will be going out by the end of this month. So I think that will help. Obviously, that's a primary benefit to the commuters on SEPTA, but it's going to help that whole area of Norristown with extra parking and extra opportunities. It'll make the Norristown Transportation Center a more attractive location for people, and that's a good thing. The more people use that center, the more likely it is that restaurants will spring up, that retail establishments will spring up. The more people coming there every day, parking their cars, coming and going, is going to help that particular part of Norristown develop as well. So I'm optimistic, Gary. I think there's some great things happening, transportation improvements, and certainly this very exciting revitalization proposal that the O'Neill Company is doing under contract with the Borough and the Redevelopment Authority of the county. And anything I can do to help any of you move these projects along or anything else of interest to the Norristown Initiative, I will be delighted to do it. I will continue to represent Norristown the rest of this calendar year. If I'm successful in the election next fall, I will be representing other parts of Montgomery County and Northeast Philadelphia, but I will never lose my love for Norristown, and I will do everything I can in the future to help you continue to grow. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. If you have a question for Joe, please raise your hand. And it's not going to be a debate type thing, so please, it's going to be a question and answer. And please give the next person an opportunity to pose a question too. Richard, first.
Yes, I'd like to go back to your thoughts upon the creation of the Norristown Initiative. I know you looked at the Atlanta project in Georgia. Some of us thought the purpose of this organization was deal with problems so difficult and so controversial, nobody else has been able to solve them. I understand, obviously, we're very careful and absolutely be nonpartisan in terms of endorsing. But what was your concept originally or now is to what extent the initiative was try to take on these very difficult and controversial projects, drug addiction, things that nobody else has been able to provide leadership, and build a coalition, as we're starting to do with Greater Norristown Corporation to some extent, and the ministry. We're trying to do something like a Greater Philadelphia movement and so forth, but now Philadelphia first, I think it is.
Right.
What's your concept of that? Should we just be safe projects, goody-goody, or should we deal with these very tough things that nobody else has been able to provide leadership on?
I think your question suggests the right answer, that you do need to be aggressive and tackle the tough social issues in Norristown. There are other groups whose charge it is to promote economic growth, business cooperation, redevelopment. There are church groups and other things of that nature, obviously. But the vision I had for the Norristown Initiative, which we first called the Norristown Project, was to bring people together for the community to decide itself what were the social challenges they needed and what then could be done about those challenges, whether it's a rather common but effective thing like a town watch, you know, that's all that's effective, or would there be a need for adult literacy, after-school programs? What is needed to bring Norristown together to deal with the social problems? And certainly when you start doing that, you're going to look at problems, drug abuse and addiction, broken families, some of those really tough social challenges that we face everywhere, not just in Norristown. But you know, Norristown has wonderful assets. It also has some problems. Surrounded by a sea of prosperity in Montgomery County, and very successful big corporations in King of Prussia, and now really all over the place in this county. There are assets to be called upon in Montgomery County, let alone the rest of the region, that can help Norristown move forward. But the problem establishment and problem solving has to come from the citizens. That's the key to the Norristown Initiative.
I have just one follow-up specific on that. You've been reading about the controversy over the church, Upper Valley Forge Presbyterian Church, having homeless sleep on the floor one night at a time. Obviously that is better than sleeping under the Dana Howard Bridge. But half a mile from here, there are large vacant buildings at the state hospital, which could be rehabbed and made used for a proper type of homeless shelter with supportive service. A number of us thought that was the right answer going way, way back. And we still think that, but is that the type of example that we know the problems?
Sure.
How many people told me it should be in Bluebell or in my own backyard? But wholly apart from that, is that the type of example you would see the Norristown Initiative trying to help?
Norristown's got to figure out how to solve these problems. Every time somebody makes a proposal for using the vacant grounds or buildings at Norristown State, the community rises up in an uproar. And you know, you can't jam things down people's throats. The idea of the initiative is to give people a way to come together and to decide on community solutions for some of these problems. Sometimes the solution is to go to government and say, knock this off, or start this, or stop that. I mean, I'm not saying people can do everything themselves, but they've also got to pull together and decide what it is we need in Norristown to improve the quality of life. And if homeless is a problem, and I believe that it is, then a local solution is better than some government mandate. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I understand that one of the big problems is the sewage treatment plant in Norristown, and I know you only have $40 million to do the whole thing. How much is relocating the sewage plant going to cost, and what are the current plans? What are you going to do with it?
I don't know. It's a good question. I've heard the mayor talk about the problem and
Okay.
identify the problem. Jonathan may or may not have something to say about that. That is a real issue. We can't dump, if you'll excuse that word, we can't dump that problem on the redeveloper. I mean, that's a governmental challenge. And I don't know the answer, but we have to pay attention to that.
Well, if they're going to combine it with the one that's a little bit further up for Plymouth Meeting, your gateway issue, you'll be bringing everybody past an enlarged sewage plant right there. So like, hey, welcome to Norristown, bigger and better.
Always a problem. I agree with you. I don't know the answer to that one. Yes, sir.
And going back to a little bit to the state hospital, I understand that there's going to be a meeting the 25th because they lost 20% of the patients and the possibility, excuse me, of closing the state hospital may come up. And what my question is one of the areas that we have a problem with in Norristown and the Norristown area is that the school district doesn't have any areas to develop so that they can bring in more resources to afford the special programs that are mandated by the federal government to provide. Is it possible that the state hospital can be developed if they close that hospital, open that up to the public market? I mean, that's some prime real estate right there, and a lot of it.
It's certainly possible. Now, we've got the Norristown Farm Park on other lands, and I want that to continue. I think that's a great asset for the Norristown area to have that farm park. But where the land where the buildings are, if the decision's made that the state doesn't need that as a hospital any longer, it could be put to a lot of different purposes. And again, the community's got to be involved in that, and there's got to be consensus on what to do. It could be given to a developer. It could be used for other governmental purposes. And I hope there can be a calm discussion about that. Norristown State Hospital, as long as I've been involved in public life in Montgomery County, generates nothing but emotion. And I understand that. People want to protect their neighborhoods, of course. I mean, I understand the concerns and the fears, but we got to get past that and try to figure out what's best for the community. Yes, ma'am.
When you speak of connecting Lafayette Street, bringing it off down at Howard Bridge and onto the Pennsylvania Turnpike, what effect will that have on the properties that are along Lafayette Street, as far as will some of that be needed for widening of the street or anything like that? Or?
They may. I don't know the answer. That hasn't been determined yet. That's part of what the engineering study has to look at. Taking people's property is always a painful thing, and I hope that can be avoided if possible. There are some parts of Lafayette Street that are limited in width, and I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. If any land is taken, it's obviously purchased by the government at fair market value. That's often not much consolation to somebody if they have to leave their home where they've raised their family. So that's why it's great to avoid that if at all possible. Well, I thank you for your attention, Gary. Thanks for letting me go first. I apologize to the panel. I've got some other stops to make, but it's a great effort this morning. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Now we're going to start into the rest of the forum. And again, thanks to Joe Hoffel for coming here today and spending his time with us. I'm glad to say that he is happy. They claim to us.
Oh, absolutely. It'll be on my tombstone. Hopefully not for many years. But it'll be on my tombstone.
Exactly.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Next on our agenda, we're going to go to Jonathan Sperber. He is Chief Counsel for O'Neill Properties, and I think the last time we had O'Neill was just prior to them being appointed the redevelopers for the county and the borough. And that was 2 years ago, almost to the date. So I guess Jonathan can give us a little bit of an update as to where we're at today.
Thank you for inviting me here to be part of this panel. Brian O'Neill was not able to be here. He was out of town this weekend. He asked me if I could come and provide you with an update of O'Neill Properties activities over the past year and a half or so, and what some of our plans are for the future to assist in the revitalization of the borough of Norristown. First of all, I guess we support strongly Congressman Huffle's efforts to make the Lafayette Street extension to the Turnpike a reality, because our view is that that transportation infrastructure improvement is key to the ultimate success of the revitalization of Norristown. And the Congressman pointed to, as examples, what's going on in Conshohocken right now, years ago what happened in Manayunk. And there's been a number of articles recently in the Inquirer and some other papers looking at the effects of the Blue Route on redevelopment in the area. And the success in the borough of Conshohocken really didn't happen and take off until that Blue Route was completed. So that's a key critical element to the ultimate success for the revitalization. As the Congressman also pointed out, that connection is not going to happen overnight. The studies alone necessary before construction can take place are going to be at a minimum 4 to 5 years. And O'Neill Properties recognizes that, and it is not our game plan to wait 4 to 5 years before doing anything within the borough. And just to give you by way of example, as most of you are aware, we have significant redevelopment activities within the borough of Conshohocken. The process of accumulating the land for our Conshohocken redevelopment took over 12 years, and we're not done yet. But Brian O'Neill really has viewed his activities in Conshohocken. It wasn't an overnight event to be able to start the redevelopment efforts. Compared to Conshohocken, we've actually have progressed much more rapidly in the borough of Norristown. We've already acquired the former Nicolette brownfield site. We've owned that for approximately a year and a half. We are right now in discussions to acquire several other properties within the borough of Norristown. And I guess although there is the ability legally to work with the redevelopment authority to condemn land to acquire that, that's not our objective. Our objective is to acquire property through negotiations with landowners. That doesn't happen overnight, but we are currently in discussions, and we feel confident that we're going to succeed in acquiring some additional key parcels that will enable us to move forward on our redevelopment and revitalization efforts. As many of you are aware, the DEP is slated to relocate to the borough at Hancock Square, and there's been efforts over a couple of years to select a developer for that site. We were very hopeful that we would have been the selected developer for that site. Unfortunately, we were not. We did submit a proposal to develop that, and we felt that we were ideally qualified and capable to do that redevelopment. Unfortunately, it went to another developer. That setback aside, we're very excited because we recently acquired the Pnc Bank building, which is a landmark structure within the borough, 75-year-old building, right at Main and Sweet Streets. And we acquired that 64,000 square foot building in February, last month. And we're going to, at the end of the day, invest $4.3 million into renovating that building. PNC is going to stay, and they're going to become our tenant. Well, they are our tenant right now. They're going to remain on the first floor of that building, and we are going to renovate the upper floors of that building. And we're already in some really exciting discussions with prospective tenants, commercial Class A office tenants, to relocate to that building. The Congressman had mentioned his efforts in securing funds to make the septic garage a reality. We have offered our assistance to the Redevelopment Authority of Montgomery County to serve as the developer of that septic garage if possible. So I was interested to hear that Septa is going to be submitting RFPs, and we will likely be responding to those RFPs because we think that is an important step to improving the revitalization. Today's panel is about Norristown gateways. we have right now, we think that it's really important to attract visitors to the borough and to create a buzz here prior to the construction of the Lafayette extension. Right now, we are working on conceptual drawings to create a restaurant row concept within the borough. And we're also in discussions to acquire and/or lease certain properties on Main Street to be able to affect the restaurant row concept. We've been working with the Norristown Planning Commission, Montgomery County Redevelopment Authority, and we believe that by creating a restaurant row, it's a way to attract visitors now. From concept to actual execution is not a very long period of time, and it's the kind of situation where we can have additional visitors within the borough within a year to a year and a half. And the county, the borough, and the Redevelopment Authority have been working closely with us to make this concept a reality. We've altogether on concept plans and professional fees, we've spent over $500,000 to date on some of our plans. And we're excited that we finally really have with the Pnc building, taking our first real big step to directly translating to revitalization and increased revenues within the borough. And we look forward to working with the Norristown Initiative and the county to make this revitalization effort a reality.
Hi. Thanks, Jonathan. As Jonathan said, the presentation today is on gateways, and how we came about this was 1999, October, the county brought down people from New York to do a feasibility study on Norristown on ways to revitalize the community. And one of the aspects that came up in the revitalization draft was the gateways of the community, and it mentioned billboards. So one of the areas that struck a nerve with me was the billboards, and how Norristown has a severe amount of billboards that just seem out of place sometimes. So in essence, with putting together this panel, I came across some information that I was working on myself with a billboard issue within Norristown. And one of the people that have been very instrumental in helping me with this issue is Lynn McConnell's group, an organization called Scrub. I came across them at the time that a billboard was going before zoning, and we were trying to get that to be, looked at closely before zoning just put their stamp of approval on it. And an article appeared in the Inquirer about Scrub and how Scrub has been very instrumental in eliminating some of the billboards that are in Philadelphia. So I invited Lynn McConnell from Scrub to give a presentation today, and I hope you would find this very informative.